And then I will not say more. I will give the word to you, Gitte, our local host.
Okay, yes. Well, thank you, Lena. Welcome to EOSC-Nordic General Assembly, the open part of the meeting. Welcome to Denmark and welcome to the Blue Planet. My name is Gitte Kusk and I am the CEO of the Danish Coordination of Digital Research Infrastructure, known as DIC. I'm told this is one of the first face-to-face meeting in the EU projects after the massive COVID-19 lockdowns. We're very happy to host you, and I am very happy to be able to meet so many of you face-to-face. Welcome to all of you, and of course also welcome to all the remote participants. I know many of you took part in the work package program yesterday at the Technical University of Denmark, and today we are in a very different place, I guess you probably have noticed. Our venue, the Blue Planet, is chosen to give you a little bit of extra for your debate and presentations today. So I hope that if you hadn't had time yet to go and look at all this underwater world, you will have time during the day as well. The Blue Aquarium, or the Blue Planet, is one of the biggest aquariums in Europe, and I hope it holds not just species from the Nordics, but also from the rest of the globe. If we take this picture to EOSC-Nordic project, we will, with all our firm standpoints in the Nordics, our know-how and expertise, our experience and our services and data, work for the integration to the whole of Europe from here and from there to the rest of the world. Today here at the Blue Planet, we could say that we are enjoying the day in our own aquarium with presentation and debates. But from our own aquarium, the EOSC-Nordic project wants to take the competences and experiences, best practices, data, services, much more, developed in the Nordics and the Baltic countries, and make them ready to be shared with the whole world. And with this, I will just wish you all in our own EOSC-Nordic aquarium a fruitful and enjoyable day at the Blue Planet. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Gitte. And before we move to our EOSC-Nordic coordinator talk, I just want to bring your attention to Christian Cucinelli, who is our project officer from the European Commission. We are very lucky to have him in the audience, in our virtual audience. And yes, we see you, Christian, and I will just give you the word for a few minutes.
Thanks a lot, Lene. Good morning, everyone. I'm Christian Cuciniello. I'm Policy Officer at the Open Science Unit in the Research and Innovation Directorate General of the European Commission. I was the former project officer of EOSC-Nordic, but I passed the baton to the much more competent hands of Christos, and that you all met during the first review of your project, and I think you realize that you are in very, very competent hands. So EOSC is a key element in our in the Commission Open Science policy, and its implementation is paramount to provide European researchers with the research commons of data and services for science. Let me first express my sincere thanks and congratulations for the EOSC-Nordic hard work and for organizing this very comprehensive General Assembly that is leveraging on the good aftermath of the project review, the project achievements of the first 2 years of activity, and the new EOSC co-program partnership. And on this subject, I think you will hear more from Willem Niedmark keynote intervention. During the last year, EOSC has walked long steps in further establishing its role in deepen the new European research area and in consolidating the political drive for its development. You know that the Commission launched officially the European Co-Program partnerships during the Research and Innovation Days in June, including the EOSC Co-Program partnership. Now Horizon Europe is at full speed, and last week we closed the first EOSC call called Enabling an Operational Open and Fair EOSC Ecosystem with 6 topics. Here I mentioned political drive, and we found the embodiment of the high political commitment in the new EOSC steering board, the commitment from the member states. The European Commission and the member states are collaborating under this board to deal with the policy development required at European and national level for achieving the strategic and implementation objective of EOSC, and to pursue synergies and alignment of national policies and investments relevant to EOSC. What we called EOSC regional projects like EOSC-Nordic play a pivotal role in addressing the main issues to reduce the fragmentation of research and innovation systems, to lever investments at national and European level, and to ensure a better flow of knowledge across national borders. But also at the technical level, we saw that the regional projects have fostered the adoption of solutions to implement the fair data principles, to onboard new services in EOSC, and to run pilots with scientific communities and on cross-cutting issues linked to the freer sharing of scientific data. I'm sure that also thanks to the detailed work of the regional projects, we have been able to see more engagement of research performing organizations, universities, and research centers in the EOSC Association. To conclude, I would like to renew the appreciation of the work done by EOSC-Nordic so far, and with the message to continue to support fostering a change of culture among researchers, among funders, and among governments towards open science. And with this, I wish you a very productive meeting.
Thank you very much, Christian. Thank you very much for the kind words. Yeah, maybe if there are questions during the afternoon, it's good to have you there as well. Now we will move on to our EOSC-Nordic coordinator, Gudmund, and Gudmund will give his talk.
Yes. Thank you.
Did we lose you, Gudmund? He's here. You are muted, Gudmund.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, very good.
And then the question is, what do you see? You see the full screen, or do you see the presentation mode? No answer. Could someone confirm that you see the full screen version of my presentation? Again?
Full screen version of a presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Then I will try not to hit the wrong button again, and we will roll. So first of all, thanks to Christian for the kind words, and in general to the European Commission for the opportunity for us to work together on such an important topic, and also being able in that way to contribute to European open science. I'll give you a snapshot and an overview of where we are. So this is more or less what was presented to the European Commission and 3 reviewers in the June meeting. So, and I'm actually happy to tell you that there has been even more progress after that. EOSC-Nordic consists of 5 Nordic, 3 Baltic, and 2 external partners. So we have the full Nordic-Baltic area as a regional project, and we have partners from the Netherlands and Germany for their leading edge competence in key areas. So Go Fair from Netherlands participate in Work Package 4 and Work Package 5 on fair metrics and machine actionable data management plans. Then the German Climate Computation Center from Germany participates in Work Package 5 on semantic mapping procedures and quality standards. We are as such 10 countries, 24 partners with altogether more than 200 project participants. The budget is 6 million euros, which gives 45 full-time equivalents, and the project runs for 36 months, of which we have completed 24 of those. This is a regional EOS project, and I thought I would tell you a little bit about the coordinator and the regional context. The regional context is the Nordic cooperation. It's an officially, or the official Nordic cooperation extends back to 1952, and it has some important milestones. So for one, there was an integrated labor market already in 1954. There was a passport union in 1957. And then the Nordic Council of Ministers was established from 1971. So I have an echo in my ear, which makes it a little bit difficult to talk. But I'll do my best. Now it ended, yes. So Nordforsk was established in 2005 under the Nordic Council of Ministers. And then in 2012, NEC was established as a unit of Nordforsk, but it was building on grid collaboration related to the data handling from CERN. So there was a Nordic Data Grid Facility, NDGF pilot project established in 2003, and that also led to the NEC organization and its establishment under Nordforsk. So NEC is a coordinator, and the echo starts again. NEC is the coordinator under the legal entity Nordforsk. Nordforsk gets its funding from the Council of Ministers for Education and Research, which is on this chart. And then to the far right of the chart, there is also an ad hoc Council of Ministers on digitalization. And that is an increasingly relevant Council of Ministers also for infrastructure collaboration. And one example of this is their new strategy, which also includes an initiative on establishing Nordic-Baltic green data spaces. So this is relevant for example, also for EOSC-Nordic in the sense that they aim at establishing green data spaces for example, for biodiversity, climate. This is highly relevant for these green data spaces to boost research and innovation in the future. So point of showing you this figure is that EOSC-Nordic is linked through NEC to the official governmental Nordic collaboration. And this gives opportunities for affecting common policy making of the region. And we will make use of this opportunity next year for the NEC 2022 conference, which is aligned with also with EOSC activities. So this is 30th of May to the 1st of June in Oslo. Conference slogan is Nordic Models for Open Science Collaboration. And this is an event that we aim to attract also political attention to. The Nordic infrastructure collaboration consists of the 5 Nordic countries plus Estonia, so 6 national members, and we are largely a project-based organization. So there's, in addition to these projects, there's one operational activity, which is the Nordic Tier 1 for CERN WCG. Projects are time-limited efforts. They have separate steering groups. They run fairly autonomous. And then there's an executive team that holds the project ownership and do day-to-day management of NAIC. And the NAIC board, which has members from each of the national provider organizations in these 6 countries, they do the strategy. And what we try to do is to also embed EOSC-Nordic into the structure. And one advantage is that it gives a common framework for discussing sustainability, or what we would call benefits realization after the project funding ends. And this is something that we have started on doing this year together with EOSC-Nordic, and I think these are very important discussions that will accelerate now during the last phase of the project. There are 5 main objectives of EOSC-Nordic. One on policies to support coordination and alignment on national policies for service provision. Then there is an objective on services to increase discoverability of services and make them accessible through the EOS portal. The FAIR objective is to promote fair data practices. Then there are demonstrators where we aim to innovate into solutions that work cross-border. And these are then tested, piloted, developed in our 6-country testbed. And finally, there's the Knowledge Hub, where we offer training and technical support to service providers and users. There are 6 work packages. For each work package, there's a work package leader that participates in project management board. They meet weekly. The General Assembly, which is the highest level decision body for the project, has elected an executive board of 7 persons. The General Assembly meets annually, and the executive board meets 4 to 6 times every year. And then we have an international advisory committee, which meet annually and gives advice on project progress and on international developments and linking towards these international developments. Some highlights to date, and we will get back to this during the day. So we've mapped national open science policies throughout the participating countries, throughout the region. And we have a checklist for service compliance and maturity. We have a framework for Nordic EOSC interoperability. And we have a fair maturity model, which is machine readable. Furthermore, we've applied it to more than 100 repositories. Then we have integrated community portals with large-scale computing across borders. So examples include climate and biodiversity and natural language processing. And you'll hear more about this from Abdulrahman later today. We have an architecture for a Nordic Health Cloud and also launched a Knowledge Hub, which simplifies engagement aims at simplifying engagement with EOSC-Nordic. So there's quite a bit here that I am proud of. So we presented midterm results to the International Advisory Committee in May, and here's a summary of their overall assessment. So they say that the cooperative, inclusive structure of EOSC-Nordic has led to achievements of objectives as well as models useful to a broader audience than EOSC-Nordic stakeholders. So a wider broadening of the audience. EOSC-Nordic has executed on its project plans and successfully built upon other EOSC and EU investments, such as FAIR, EUDAT, ESFRIS, and many national organizations. And there's collaboration with EOSC regional project through 6 task forces and a common collaboration board. Furthermore, the International Advisory Committee concludes that EOSC-Nordic milestones and deliverables are mainly on schedule, where action has been within our control, and some factors that have been beyond our control would be the central EOS progress and also the COVID-19 situation. They also note that sustainability steps are underway in parts of the project. We also on sustainability, I could mention that discussions with NAIC partners are ongoing, and discussions within the NAIC board took place in the NAIC board meeting on 22nd of September. So what is being discussed is which of the key assets from this project would be natural for NAIC to sustain, and what assets should be sustained by partners or by national organizations. So very good groundwork done by the project, led by Sara Garivelli, a good analysis that have provided the basis for these discussions. And as I mentioned previously, these discussions will now intensify over the next year. The European Commission review, which Christian mentioned, concluded that the project implementation is satisfactory. I think that is the highest mark you can get from the Commission. They need to be sober on this. And they also recommended, in order to improve the implementation, some changes. So roughly 5 changes, and we have implemented these in our plan, and this was accepted formally by the European Commission on 20th of September. So we're proud to say that we're very much on track. For my conclusion, I am proud to summarize some of the impacts to date in numbers. More than 100 research data repositories has been assessed by our fair maturity algorithm. There are more than 300 people trained within the framework of EOS-Nordic. We have 10 early adopters, which spelled out means 10 use cases with 10 communities. There's 1 in archaeology, 1 in natural language processing, 4 in climate science, 2 in biodiversity, and 2 in health. Then we have harvested records with the B2B find service and into the EOSC metadata catalog. We've been to more than 60 events, and that was in June. Lots of hits on the web pages, and a lot of subscribers to the EOS-Nordic monthly newsletter. So that's all I had for my introduction. Hope you will enjoy the rest of the meeting, and so will I. Thank you. It's awfully quiet in here. Am I supposed to say more?
From VRNet. So the question is, I mean, impressive KPIs there, the achievements, but how many services are actually onboarded to the catalog? Maybe I missed that number. Is there a number of EOSC services onboarded to the catalog? Yeah.
So perhaps Lena would like to comment on that, if you want the exact number.
Thanks. So this is, in a sense, a good question, and it coincides with the review comment. the number of services from the Nordics in the EOSC portal at the moment are around 10 plus minus. Number of services that we have initially listed and prepared to be added to the EOSC catalog is around 40. Number of services that we would like to have there but these services are not in EOSC portal because we want to essentially do the catalog integration. And there are some issues there. I will talk about them later on. Yeah, so this is the number of transactions that we have done through EOSC is 0. And I think this is the main metric which we feel is problematic. I think our also KPIs are same.
Mhm.
Thank you, and my mic is working. That's good. Let's see if my presentation works. So thank you for inviting me here to speak at EOSC-Nordic. It's the first time now since the pandemic I'm speaking in front of people, so it's really special. So it's nice to be here. So I'm Willem Widmark. I'm one of the directors of EOSC Association. I'm also the library director at Stockholm University and the senior advisor on open science to the rector of Stockholm University. So where do we come from? The shared vision between European Commission, member states and associated countries, a large community. The decision of the governing bodies to institute a co-programmed partnership as the best instrument to collectively achieve the vision. We had all the projects before, but we didn't have a common steering for the projects. So we will put the association in the middle for steering to get everything collected together and that we reach the goal of open science for the future. So it's a complicated model, how we governance the EOSC association. So the new governance model agreed with EU countries for the next EOSC implementation phase after 2020 will be a tripartite including the European Commission, the EOSC association, and something is wrong. Oh, it's done right again. And then we have the steering board from the main member states. So this is the steering of the EOSC for the future with the Commission, the association, and the steering board from the member states. So that's 3 different parties meeting together to steer this. Now I can change. And you did it on the mouse, yes. So the partnership structure gets even more complicated. So on the left, you have the EOSC Association with the General Assembly, the Executive Board, and the Executive Director. And then we have the steering board from the member states. And the association will handle the EOSC core, the beginning, and then we have the EOSC exchange. And then all the member states will build into the strategy, and the EOSC Association will talk to the European Commission how to work with the programs to process EOSC for the future. So we will have different projects coming into everything. Then we have the national founders, and we have the commercial service providers and the different members to provide things into the different EOSC exchange and EOSC core. So this is rather, we have also built the office now of the EOSC Association, and we have an incoming general secretary, and we are having communication officer and CTO and everything to have the office to steer everything with the board. And I think, yes. And the membership within EOSC Association, you could become a member before the first, or at the first General Assembly in December last year. And we have now a predominance of research performing organization. There is 121. And research funding are 19, and service providing are 88. And then, so in December at the General Assembly were nearly 200 organizations there. And we are glad to see that there are many research performing organizations as well within the association. And the spread, the geographical spread, you can see that is really dominated from the south of Europe. It's Italy, France, and Spain. But we have members from all the Nordic countries. But it differs a lot. From Denmark, we have Nordinet and DTU. And Norway, we have Uninet and CESTA. Finland, CSC, EUDAT, and European Mathematical Society. And from Sweden, we have 6 different universities and 2 founders. So we are not that many research performing organizations from the Nordic countries. I think that would be good if we could become more members from the Nordic countries within the association. At the first General Assembly, the Board of Directors was elected, and we are 1 president and 8 directors from different countries, and I'm from the Nordic region. Otherwise, it's dominated by the Southern Europe again. And I sit for 1 year's mandate, and there will be a new election at the next General Assembly in December to have 3 new directors in EOSC. What is then EOSC? A web of scientific insight, web of fair data and related services, federation of relevant existing and future services, a virtual space where science, producer, and consumers come together, an open-ended range of content and services, and it's a quality mark made in Europe, data made in Europe. Here you can see the European Open Science Cloud objective tree, which is within the SRIA, where we have put the problems, the barriers, the objectives, and the benefits of working for open science. And we have, of course, really good objectives, but we have to overcome the barriers and the problems to reach the benefits. And I think you will get these slides afterwards if you want to look at this objective 3 that we are working after. And of course, you have to have a timeline on when for this co-creation with the European Commission. And it's a 10-year project that will somewhat end in 2027. And here is what we are aiming for, to have a minimal viable EOSC around mid-2023. And to prepare all the EOSC governance, we are working on that now, the EOSC core, federated infrastructure, and EOSC exchange. So this will take time to collect everything from all the different projects that are running out here in Europe and all the different providers, and then to get the researchers to get their data into this and everything. So it's a huge project and it will take some time, but hopefully at the end of 2027, we will have it up and running. It's not just minimum, it will be the EOSC. Core functions for EOSC Association in 2020 and forward is to develop and govern the federating core, manage the compliance framework, manage trusted certification, manage the AAI, manage PID policies, and really important is the outreach to different stakeholders, monitor services and transaction, manage the EOSC trademark, and contribute to Horizon EU policy. And the priorities for the EOSC implementation stage 21 to 22 is to ensure the open science practices and skills are rewarded and thought becoming the new normal. Enable the definition of standards and the development of tools and services to allow researchers to find, access, reuse, and combine results. Establish a sustainable and federated infrastructure enabling open sharing of scientific results. And as I'm speaking about, you should join the EOSC Association. Your organization should do that, and it's easy to do it. And if you apply before the General Assembly, you will get in at the General Assembly in December. To run the EOSC Association, we have started task forces. And that is a structure to allow associations, members, and others to help steer the implementation of EOSC. Groups should liaise with EOSC projects and offer feedback. Identify strategic gaps and areas for investment to input to the new TRIA 2.0. Advisory groups are an umbrella for a set of task forces that are highly related and have the same EOSC Association liaison person. So here are the 5 different advisory groups and the board directors that are liaisons to them. So the implementation of EOSC, technical challenges of EOSC, metadata and data quality, research careers and curricula, and sustaining EOSC. And under each advisory group, we have different task forces then. So it's under implementation of EOSC, it's PID policy and implementation, researcher engagement and adoption, rules of participation, compliance, and monitoring. Metadata and data quality is fair metrics and data quality, and semantic interoperability. Research careers and curricula, data stewards curricula and career path, research careers recognition and credit, and upskilling countries to engage in EOSC. Then we have sustaining EOSC, is defining funding models for EOSC, and long-term data preservation. And then last, the technical challenges on EOSC. It's the AAI architecture, infrastructure for quality research software, and technical interoperability of data and services. So we had, when we went out, call for members to the task forces, we got 545 applicants from 41 different countries, and that is really good. And as you see, it is the technical interoperability that most people choose to, but all of the different task forces got many applicants. And we couldn't take in all because all the different task forces decided how many can we be within a task force to work in a good way. So it differs from 23 members in the smallest group, the PID policy, to 67 members in the technical interoperability group. And 6 of the task forces choose to accept all the application. And where selections were made, this prioritized relevant skills and then sought to bring balance in gender, geography, and organization, and etc. But this isn't closed. You can become a member in the future as well, because when the task forces are working, maybe they need new competence and ask for more people into the group. So it's not closed group, but they start working. Now we have a meeting in next week with all the coordinators of the task forces, and then they start the meetings, and they will have the agenda for how they will work for the future. So the work will start now. And they will be really important to get things into the new SHRIA, and then the EC will look at the SHRIA and what projects do we need in the new calls. So how is it from the Nordic countries? So from Denmark, we have 7 people in the task forces, from Finland, 14, Norway, 4, and from Sweden, 19. And I'm glad to see that members associated with EOSC-Nordic are 7 people within the task forces. So maybe one of you in the room is in a task force, I don't know. So from this, what conclusions can we draw? I think we are too few members in the association from the Nordic countries to really influence in the building of EOSC. It's important to get more members from this region. We have some influence by the Nordic members in the task forces. I don't know the spread in which task forces from EOSC-Nordic, but we have members in all task forces from the Nordic countries. And I think that the Nordic countries should work together to get a stronger voice within EOSC and EOSC Association. And this project, EOSC-Nordic, is a good network to start from. You already have a network within the Nordic and Baltic region to work on these things. So this is really a good start. And I think also that EOSC-Nordic should contact the EOSC Association to discuss what findings from the project that could be useful for the future work with EOSC. And I think we need to have that call soon. But I talked to the general director and we will ask for a call with EOSC-Nordic. So that was my presentation. Any questions?
Yeah, Sarah has a question. Where is the microphone coming?
This is the problem with the hybrid meetings.
Yeah.
I think always the microphone isn't working.
Okay.
Now we hear you.
I mean, you have shown how successful in Sweden you have been in onboarding a lot of universities as members of the EOSC Association. In Finland, we are trying to encourage universities to join as well, but we are finding this difficult. So can you share maybe some tricks or how you manage to do that? So, or what are the benefits that they?
Well, I think the most important thing we did, we went through the Rectors Conference, SUHF. So we had a meeting for all the rectors at the universities in Sweden and talked about EOSC and why the organizations should join EOSC. So we started with that Stockholm University will join EOSC as the member for the Rectors Association, and then other universities followed. Then we have a group within the Rectors Conference that are send information to all the higher education organizations in Sweden. So we have a network to talk about what's happening in EOSC and talk about why you should be a member. And the most important thing why you should be a member is that you can influence in the future. EOSC is something that really gonna be something for the researchers and for the research for the future. And if you're not in, it's hard to influence. And today it's rather expensive. It's 10,000 euros per year, but that will be differentiated from next year, so it will be cheaper depending from which country you come from. But I think you need to have it on the university management level to have the discussions there, that the universities know about this and know that this is important for the future.
Thank you. Ilya?
Oh, thank you. I'm probably going to ask a bit impolite question. So I'm leading the work package 3, where we're trying to provide the motivation for service providers to join EOSC. And can you comment about that? I guess it's clear that we are looking for the sustainability model for EOSC. So how far is EOSC Association with that?
Well, I think that is one of the things that the task forces really have to work on now, how we're going to do that. And as you see in the scheme, where we're not there as yet. But I can't give you the answer when it will open. We have the portal and we have different things, but it's not in the hands of the association yet. And it will happen a lot with EOSC Future as well. And we are talking between the association and EOSC Future about this.
Okay, but maybe a follow-up. Do you see a problem that we have so many activities related to onboarding, testing it out, and so on, without actually solving the core issue as to how this would work and why would it work?
Yes, that is a problem. I think that is one of the main problems why we started the association, that we had too many different projects that are not working together, and now we had to get time to collate everything together.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We have a question here from René. Yeah, it's coming. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, René Belso from DAI. So might you elaborate on what would be the motivation for universities to join the association?
I think all universities in Europe have to have their way of good handling of research data. And if you don't have it at your university, you can't come out to Europe. But I think the problem is that many of the university managements don't think about good work with the research data management. So I think really you need to talk about how this is the core of research, to handle your data in a correct way and that you can share your data. And that's why you should join EOSC Association, to get more knowledge and to work for the future to handle this in a good way and work collaboratively. You can't only do it at your university, you have to do it in your country and then within EU and rest of the world. But if you stand outside of the association, you can't influence it at all.
But now we add one layer. We have ESPRI projects, ERICs, which are built up, and they are providing these services already, but domain-wise,
Yes.
of course. But so there is a layer, and universities need to be adapting their processes accordingly.
Yes, and they
So-
must know how to do it.
Yeah, and they are doing that because the ERICs are already providing services. So my question to you is, how you put EOSC then here? If you are already in this, so what is this S3 EOSC level?
Oh, that was a hard question for me to
Yeah,
answer,
I know.
really.
I know, I'm not trying to make you
No, I understand.
embarrassed but I know this is difficult, and I mean, it needs to be kept up all the time.
Yes, definitely.
So it's on. I have a question that may seem like swearing the church, as we say in Sweden. And the question is, how do we go about making sure? Because when I speak to researchers and other people out in the universities in Sweden, I get the feeling that they see EOSC as something that has been annexed by the librarians. It's being run by the librarians at the libraries for the libraries. That's kind of the view that some of the researchers I meet have. So how do we break away from that? How can we solve that? So deliver it from the libraries, as it were.
Yes, I don't think EOSC is not at all driven from the libraries. I'm a library director within EOSC, but otherwise it's research infrastructures and researchers. I think it is a problem at many universities in Sweden. It is the libraries that are handling the workflows for the research data. And the researchers don't really see why they should do it. So it has to be a moment not top down, it must be bottom up. We have to engage the researchers in why they should work on this and why they should. It's not a burden, you need to do this for the future. But I think one of the problems is we always say, this is a demand from EU, it is demand from the funders, it is everything. We don't talk to the researchers about what is it doing for them, why it is helping them. And I don't know why they think that it is the libraries that are running it, because it isn't. And it shouldn't be either. It's not a library infrastructure.
Okay, I think with that ending line, we thank you very much, Wilhelm, for your talk and good questions and good answers. Yes, let's give Wilhelm a hand.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is Lars Fischer from Nordnet, working in our work package 2. And Lars will be giving us some insights on legal issues and policies.
We on? We on. What were you supposed to press to advance? Oh, all right. I'll try the mouse. All right. So thank you very much to Wilhelm for a very nice overview of EOSC Association and the very important work going on there. We're now going to change gear a little bit and talk about achievements and for the first half of the EOSC-Nordic project and what we plan to do for the second half. I'm going to address work package 2. There will be more talking about other work packages. No. Oh, there we go. Now, if I can just remember the next time which button I pressed, it would be really good. So, work package 2 is the policies, legal issues, and sustainability work package. In this work package, we look at classifying and understanding national policies on open science and resource provisioning to have a grasp of the landscape. We look at models for sharing data, for sharing resources, and for providing services across borders. And we look at collaboration models between the countries and cross-border collaboration in general, including business models. We look at what might be legal issues in doing things cross borders and having this international collaboration. And we try to look at, can we make recommendations on addressing those legal issues? And finally, we try to do some policy coordination, help the countries come together and together address policy issues around open science and resource provisioning. So it's a fairly broad field, but all in sort of in, you could say, brought together by policy issues and thinking about how do we advance open science in the Nordic and Baltic countries. What we've done so far is, first of all, we've had a couple of policy workshops. There's been 2 of those, bringing together a wide range of stakeholders from the Nordic and Baltic countries, service providers, resource owners, ministry people, policymakers, to discuss and exchange ideas about what are the current challenges, what are plans in various countries, what are things we can do to address the challenges, what are experiences maybe from one country we can lift to the other, and simply to try to bring together people and have a common understanding as a region about, do we have something in common? Can we work in common? As Wilhelm was saying before, could we come together to influence European policy if that is needed? Are there things that are common concerns for our region that we could, we're small countries, our influence is limited, but maybe if we band together, we can have more influence, right? So those are things these workshops have addressed. The first one was here in Copenhagen, was face-to-face, and I think was very, very successful also in bringing people together. The second one was unfortunately online, but I think also very successful in the presentations, but harder to have joint dinners and social lives and stuff like that online. We've done 2 deliverables on assessment and open science policies and resource provisioning in the countries, so understanding the landscape. We have done analysis of cross-border collaboration in the region. There's been one on legal insights, what are challenges for cross-border data sharing and service provisioning. There has been an analysis of what are the service delivery chain, how do you get from centralized services to a country, to an institution, to a researcher, how does that actually work in practice? And there's been analysis of cross-border collaboration models, what are models for bringing people together and working on both data sharing and services. And we also do liaison with other EOSC projects coming up, mostly probably EOSC Future, and become very important. Wilhelm was inviting us, we'd very much like to talk to the EOSC Association. It's very, very important to us. That alignment between what we do and what we find and what you're working on is key. And then finally, as Gudmund was saying in the introduction, we have started to work on sustainability of the achievements of the project. To dive into a couple of the things that we have done or are doing going forward, we will do an update on the investigation on legal issues. The first investigation on legal issues and barriers to open science did some analysis and found some barriers found that mostly the barriers aren't the laws. It's more the interpretation of the laws in the institutions and the insecurity that creates the institution and makes it hard for the researcher to know, can I share this or not? What is legal? Stuff like that. The review told us, that's very nice to know that. What are you going to do about it? So the next deliverable is trying to go out and give some recommendations. We've done an analysis there and have some points about talking to legal experts at the universities. What are you doing? What are you struggling with to help researchers? So there are some recommendations that, for example, center around there should be a code of conduct that offer guidelines. Maybe the EOSC Association can help establish that so an institution know what to what is expected of me? What is it I should be doing as a researcher? No, my institution should have this function for me and should we have this kind of advice because it's in the code of conduct, those sort of things. And then we can facilitate harmonization and things like that. So those are recommendations. The deliverable is coming out very soon. Those. We have also looked at cross-border business models. Those of you who were in the working meeting yesterday know that, again, we have investigated cross-border collaboration models and in order, again, to now not just do analysis but get recommendations, we are doing a more in-depth study of business models. And we have been, until now, focusing on the demonstrated in the EOSC-Nordic project and are finding it's very fragmented. It's not easy to identify clear models for cost recovery between countries and taking resources from Wilhelm's University and providing them to a university in Denmark is not, there's not a standard model for that at all, right? It's a very fragmented landscape. So we haven't so far found sustainable business models for doing that. And we're going to broaden the analysis a little bit as we discussed also yesterday. We will also look at some of the cluster projects on maybe the ESFRI projects. And we discussed yesterday that maybe we should try to do a taxonomy, look at different kinds of scenarios where what are different kinds of resources being provided at different use cases with that to better understand what the landscape for cross-border resource business models and cost recovery actually is, because I think one of the problems, or we think one of the problems here is that when we talk about business model for cross-border services and cost recovery, usually we don't talk about the same thing, so the discussion becomes very confused because is it Lumi resources being consumed in Sweden? Is it Lumi resources being consumed outside the Lumi consortium? Is it data from a Swedish university to a Danish university? Probably those things are scenarios are very different. So we should maybe start by classifying those so that we at least know what we're talking about when we're trying to solve these problems. So that's the drive right now with that. And again, we hope to have something there that the EOSC Association can pick up and drive forward. Right? We will also do a third and final update on Opensize science and resource policies in the Nordic and Baltic countries, update the assessments we have, update the analysis and the indexation of infrastructure resources and service provisioning and so on. Similar to the first two, but sort of the final one saying how far have we gotten in the span of the years that the EOSC-Nordic project has been running. That work has just started. And we will do a third policy workshop and final event for EOSC-Nordic. Very much hope we can go back and do that face-to-face. Very much hope that we can do that together with the NICE conference in, we believe, May next year. And we hope that by then it's not just the Danish government that declared the epidemic is over, but it actually is something we can do and come together. And again, the idea with that would be to bring together, again, stakeholders in open science, policymakers, have a frank discussion as we do in the Nordic and Baltic countries, work on our community, work on establishing that it hasn't just been in the span of years when EOSC-Nordic was running, but this is something we will work on together going forward as a sustainable community. So that was my words in work package 2. Happy to take any questions or comments on our work.
Any questions?
It was all perfectly clear. Now, Ilya, of course. Thank you.
Of course.
I would have been disappointed, Ilya.
Yeah. Microphone is coming up.
Yeah, sorry for occupying more space. The fact that there is no so far identified a business model means that it's a pretty hard sell to the policymakers, the EOSC, right?
It is maybe especially a pretty hard sell to policymakers at the institutional level. Yeah.
What would be, in your opinion, the impact if by the end of EOSC-Nordic we will not find a business model?
If we can't find sustainable models for resource provisioning between countries, we will keep with this protectionist, isolated model, and researchers won't be able to take advantage of all this. I mean, I think it's crucial if the EOSC vision is to become reality, that we find a way where researchers can collaborate, not just by sending USB sticks around, but actually using resources between the countries, right? And, you would think that a region such as the Nordic and Baltic region with very similar countries and similar ideas could work on that, right? But it is a difficult challenge because it is very sort of connected culturally in the way we do national funding, in the way we do ownership of resources, in the way we used to think about all these things. It's all part of national programs and thinking in other countries and different funding models. It's cultural shift. It takes some time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. So there's a lot of talk about, uniting the Nordics and the Baltics to ensure the interests of the Nordics and the Baltics in the EOSC Association more Europe-widely, right? But I was wondering, do you have any clear sort of idea of what that is? What is the Nordic and Baltic interest in the EOSC that differs from the other countries and regions?
It is at this point not clear that there are specific things other than the will to collaborate and the will to look more at, I think, data sharing and less at providing, how do I say this politely? In the Nordic countries in general, things like EOSC is not about getting a free lunch, right? It's not about securing cheap resources from the EU or from somewhere else. It is really about enabling researchers to sharing data. And I think that view of it is about data sharing is something at least that is common for the Nordic and Baltic countries. And also we have infrastructures in the Nordic countries that are very, very advanced in things like trust and identity, research object naming and stuff like that, where we believe we have, the Pohori project is really, really advanced, and we would like to promote that as common European standards, because if Europe adapts very good technology we have developed, it will be easier for us, and we also believe it will, of course, it will be better for research.
But in the long term, really, I mean, if there is no EOSC, you would have anyway a Nordic OSC, right? You could have that sustained without.
We have Nike. Goodman is doing a fantastic job with that. Yes? So Nordic collaboration will always exist, right? But research isn't limited to the Nordic countries, so it's very limiting.
Self-standing open science cloud for the Nordics, one way or another.
I can't answer to that. I don't know if there will be a Nordic open science cloud.
Without all the policies and all the packaging of EOSC, you could not say that.
No, you have to do all the policy work, right? Because the policies in the Nordic countries are not the same. Even if you want to coordinate just between Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, and Iceland, you would still have to do policy synchronization and adaptation and all of that.
Saying that you don't need EOSC to do this. I mean, you could theoretically do it.
In theory, you could. Right?
And there is a willing to do such a thing in the long term.
I don't speak for any of the ministries. I don't know what they're willing to do. But I think it is good to do it at the European level, because Nordic researchers don't just work in the Nordic countries. They work with Switzerland and Czech Republic and stuff, so that's needed.
Yes, this is a very good discussion. I think I would just what we have in the Nordics is we have a collaboration model really around Nike. And so we are used to be working together and collaborating on around infrastructure. I think that's where we really have a advantage from the Nordic countries. And
we have the Lumi project, right? We have Nordnet network and all kinds of infrastructure we work together. But on the policy level and the data sharing, not yet so much, right? But hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Lars, for a very interesting talk, and we will continue to hear also a little bit more work of BP2 led by Sarah in our closing keynote. But we will now continue with Andreas Jonsson, leader of Work Package 4, working on the fair uptake in the Nordics. And Also, very sadly, we must say goodbye also to Andreas. He is leaving EOSC-Nordic and Nordforsk his position, but we have been very pleased with your efforts, Andreas, and yes, tell us what you got.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, so I'm the work package leader of work package 4, fair data. So the objective in this work package has really been to try to help data repositories in the Nordics to implement FAIR in their existing repositories. So that was the mission that we set out when we wrote the application in 2018, and and it's really that. I mean, it's very hard to try to force researchers to place their data where they don't necessarily think that this is the best area to do so. How did I switch to the next slide again? Okay. Okay, I can do it with the mouse. It's a little shaky. Okay, so yeah, it's hard to get researchers to change their habits. So the idea was to help make the repositories more fair, and that's what we set out to do. So we had 3 main tasks in this work package. One was to set up a way to measure the uptake of FAIR, so we directly assess the fairness of repositories from the very start of the project and continue doing so throughout the project. So that was a major, let's say, first-year effort. Then the second task was to actively help repositories implement FAIR, so to improve some of those areas that the assessments showed could be made better in order to make data more accessible or findable, reusable or interoperable. And then the last task, which is something which has started only this year, is a policy and work VP2 related activity where we will study make an interview survey of to map FAIR incentives in communities. Okay, so that was the plan we set out to do from the beginning. So the measurements of these of the fairness, this was achieved using first a Wilkinson assessment tool and later Fuji. So we surveyed more than 100 repositories. We ended up with 98 which fit our criteria, and then we ran this assessment tool which automatically assumes that all the metadata is available as machine actionable metadata. So the first early result was that 24% of these repositories are not possible to measure because they lack identifiers to the data sets. So without that, it's not possible to do this machine actionable assessment. So that and that we are still monitoring, but it is not changing dramatically. So there may be good reasons for why some repositories choose not to use identifiers, but that's a little out of our hands. And then the about 75 repositories were left, which show an average FAIR score of 24%, which is not impressive, but this is how it looks like a few weeks ago. And you can see there's a lot of red boxes, which means that they don't score very high on this assessment. So I remind you that this assumes that all the anything that can be assessed has to be machine actionable. That is the requirement of this tool. And it's, by the way, also a requirement of FAIR. So using those results, we shared these with the communities, contacted them, and also offered them help through these community workshops that we have held 3, and last one is going to be held next week. And we have also offered them written feedback in terms of reports based on these assessments. And this has had some success, I would say. And again, the tool enables us then to continuously monitor the uptake. So we have already seen that some communities have made changes to their repositories, and the FAIR score has gone up. It's not a dramatic effect, but I will show you this a little later. Yeah, I think I can skip this one. It's a more technical aspect, but this is basically the result of the entire sample as measured very recently, earlier this month. But so the average is indicated here, 0.24. There's the 24% which are out of the sample effectively because we cannot measure them, and the rest is, as you can see, very dominantly at low FAIR scores. So there's a lot to be gained, but to be fair, it has also improved over the course of this year, at least. Okay. So the fairness. So one aspect that we wanted to achieve by monitoring basically the uptake is to repeatedly redo these assessments, and we've done so with the Fuji tool since early this year. The challenge is that this version, there are continuously changes to this software, partially from our discovery of bugs or unwanted effects, and we report that back to the FAIR team that is behind this tool, and so new versions come out quite frequently. So, and with the change in version number, it's really hard to compare from between versions. So the last period of 2 months, we have used the same version, and we will try to stick to this for until next year. And there is some indication, as you can see in the blue line here, or the blue data points, that there are increments lately after the summer in the results. This fluctuates because when you may run this the next week, and one repository is down, and then we're not able to access those data sets. So it's not going to be like a monotone increasing trend necessarily, but we are detecting changes that we then confirm by looking at the repository in question. And the red data points are those where we exclude data site metadata. So for many repositories, we use the DOIs as the PID identifier, and that provides metadata as part of the package. And so, to be fair, we also measure without this metadata, and those are the red data points. So that is metadata that is in-house, so to speak, in the repository. So other additional activities that we are running, so that mentioned the implementation and policy work. This is ongoing. So we offer communities a select sample of communities to meeting to provide feedback directly on their repository in terms of the fair assessment results and guidance on core trust seal certification. So that typically involves a self-assessment and feedback on self-assessments. And this work, those two combined, will be used to test FAIR's FAIR proposed FAIR certification scheme later this year or early next year. And the FAIR incentive study, this is has started in January, and interviews started now in summer. And this will result in a stakeholder meeting probably before summer next year, and culminate with a report as one of the deliverables. Okay, so the highlights of work package 4 are there are 98 data repositories that we have repeatedly assessed, 877 data sets in total from 75 repositories. We developed this streamlined pipeline for executing the assessments and tools to process that as automated as we can do it. There's the result of the 24% of the sample which cannot be assessed due to the fact that they don't have identifiers. The average is 0.24, as I mentioned, or 24%. So if we only look at those repositories that are running on existing platforms, software platforms, this average is substantially higher, so it's 43% as compared to 24. And if we only look at certified repositories, there's a slightly higher result of 30% for those. And the core trust seal certification is combined with self-assessments. This is now ongoing, as I said. We don't have a lot of communities that are sort of actively or that we are interacting with concurrently, but this is a process that takes time. We find that one challenge is really that repositories don't have enough resources, and so this prioritization of working on core trust seal certifications or even verification of repository data is somewhat low. And this is probably one of the lessons learned from the work package 4. And yeah, it's not to be avoided that this, I mean, the results of FAIR assessments show that it's relatively poor results when we look at a random sample such as we have collected from various repositories and domains. But it is possible. We have also shown that it is possible to do something about those results by actively interacting with the communities and guiding them on how to improve that. And that's the end of this talk.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Is there any questions? Yes, Anders?
Thank you for the presentation. And could you clarify a little bit what kind of repositories are you talking about? What are your communities? Is it research communities running disciplinary repositories, or what are you really measuring?
it's a mix. So there are some generic repositories there, which are generic and not earmarked to any one community. And then there's probably 2/3 of the domain repositories. But this is from life sciences, climate research, linguistics, all over the place. So the way we selected the sample was starting with selecting basically all repositories that were listed in RE3 data in 2019, and then adding on repositories from an internal survey.
Yeah.
So I value very much the automatic survey. I think that is a very good way forward to visualize sort of how we are doing. But I'm not in this area, so I'm just curious. How many repositories are there? Like in the EOSC-Nordic project community kind of, we are monitoring 98, I said, so are there 100 and we're doing great, or are there 10,000 and we are doing like a tiny bit of them? I have no idea.
Yeah, so EOS-Nordic, this being EOS-Nordic, we have, of course, only focused on repositories that can be connected geographically to the Nordic region and the Estonian, and the Baltic countries. So I can't really answer whether we are 50% complete or, but I don't think there are many factors more repositories available. It's we are sampling a fair amount of repositories, I would say. The reference is really, and this is something we encourage repositories to do also, is to register in RE3 data, because that is basically the best source that we are aware of the data repositories for research. And so if you go there, I believe you will find about 2,500 globally. So that gives at least some indication.
I have a question. Can you say some, I mean, is this, how good are we doing in the Nordics? I mean, I don't know, what should be our ambition from your point of view?
Well, the ambition should always be to improve, I think, but because implementing data standards like metadata standards like schema.org will make your data more discoverable through Google data search or other services. So it does make a difference in this, I mean, making your data available to others and discoverable. So it's hard to compare to any. I have made a study of, let's say, renowned repositories in globally, sample of 15 or 20, and compared to those, it's not very good. But these are repositories that are already leading the way, so to speak, like Pangea or Zenodo. So large and well-established repositories.
Do we know? Can we compare to any other fairness?
No, I think so. Yeah, to finish the answer is, I think this average of the 24% is representative globally. Also, I think that's basically as good as the answer can get at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, Anna?
Sorry, I have one more question. You're focused very specifically on repositories and measured what you call fairness of repositories, which I'm a little bit skeptical of that term, but anyways, I understand what you mean. What would you say, well, why did you choose repositories? If we didn't think about fairness of repositories, but how well are we doing with implementing FAIR? Is this really the most important thing, or was it just the thing that was available to measure on, or because, or is this the main focus on implementing FAIR, or how would you think about that?
Well, I think there are at least two reasons. One is that Work Package 4 or EOS-Nordic don't have an enormous amount of resources available. So to do this in any other manual way would be not possible, simply. So this was the way that we found is most efficient in order to cover as many data sets and repositories as possible, and with the minimum effort. So the downside is, of course, that these assessment tools are, at least when we started, were somewhat immature, and so they have matured during those 2 years that have passed now. And I think now it's substantially better, and I do believe that using these what I consider objective criteria and measurable and repeatable measurable metrics to assess whether a repository or data set is fair or not, or whether it fulfills certain criteria, then this is a very good method which can be scaled up, which is not the case for those that have tried manually assessing individual repositories, because that is a very time-consuming task.
Yeah, okay. And then I would like to say thank you very much, Andreas. Thank you for good questions and good replies. And also thank you very much for your effort in EOSC-Nordic. We will be missing you for sure there.
Again, for the last session of the open part of the EOSC-Nordic General Assembly. Okay, and actually I have, Ilya is really ready for some very nasty questions. So we are ready to, you don't be shy. I think we need some, a bit more action on and discussion. And I know you all here are very good and are very good critics. We have experts in criticism in this audience. So I think this is the time, because this is how we will get better. And we are over halfway through EOSC-Nordic, and so we really need your input, and we need your pointers to where we can improve, what is blocking our work, and so forth. So I think really think about that, and with these words, I will give the word to you, Ilya. You are the work package leader of VP3. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so Ilya is very ready, means essentially that I think one of the good qualities in EOS-Nordic is that people are very open and honest, and generally, if there is a problem, you can discuss about that and find a solution. And I think that at least in the Work Package 3, we do have an issue with meeting some of the goals of the work package, and I think it would be nice to not just talk about them, but to try to find a solution to make sure that we actually bring value to our target audience in the work package, which are service providers. So just to give a bit of impression as to the structure of the work package, this is a bit technical side on the project side, but essentially it's a relatively big work package. So we have around 100 person months, and we have representation from essentially all the national infrastructure providers from each country of the region, so Nordics and Baltics. On the project side, we essentially are doing okay. So we are meeting milestones. We are doing most of the deliverables on time. We are missing a bit the KPIs, but not something very bad. However, I will get back to KPIs in a second. So when we started with the design of the work package, the hypothesis was as follows. In order to make EOSC, you need to look at the existing local services as well as national, and make sure that they can work together and across the border. And for this reason, we essentially have two main objectives. One is to discover those services and make sure that they manage to become EOS compliant. And from the other side, we want to make sure that the services are more interoperable with each other, so they're more similar. And correspondingly, we constructed the work package in two parallel tracks of activities. So essentially, the first objective is achieved by the first task, and the second one is by the second task. So when we're talking about integrating of the existing services, the first question comes is that what exactly is the service? Because, well, as many people, as many definitions, and we started by figuring out a very basic maturity model for the services, which is based on the preliminary existing work, but something that we could take and apply to the thing which is claimed to be a service. So we have devised that, published it, promoted it a bit, and also used it for analyzing the first round of services that we have discovered. The first round of discovery was basically looking around the partners which are part of the EOSC-Nordic. And so it's essentially national infrastructures and or connected service providers. So this list was done quite early in the project, and we also used it and jointly done with VP2 for analyzing the implications of the policy. And yeah, but the main assumption and how we approached to that was that we thought that, okay, where can we actually make a difference as EOSC-Nordic, as VP3? Can we go to the local level and start explaining that, you know what, you need to start sharing, you need to start applying different policies and so on? In theory, yes, but that would essentially consume all the possible effort in the world and without any guarantees. So we thought, okay, can we actually go to the national agencies? So what that means is that we said, okay, we don't care about the services that do not want to be opened up at all. So we skip those. We help them if they want, but we do not go there. So second one was, okay, once the services want to be shared, so they have a motivation, internal one, let's make sure that the collaboration works in the national level. So let's say service from University A can be consumed by service in University B in the same country. If that actually works, then no-brainer. Let's help it out and make it possible to do it in a cross-border manner through EOSC. So this was the initial design, in a sense, of work that we wanted to do. While doing that, we found out this initial model is not entirely correct. So there are some issues there. It would be great if that would work. And maybe that's something that will happen in the future. But in order to make, to provide support for service providers that are not so much aware of EOSC, we have also established a knowledge base, support network, and so on. So if there is a service provider that is willing to get to EOSC, we have the manpower as well as facilities to make it happen. So in terms of the mapping, I think we're doing okay from one side. So we know that we can assess essentially a service, whether it's a good fit or not, whether it's mature or not. The assessment is actionable, meaning that we can suggest also some improvements that could be done. Also, we know that all the Nordic countries, well, have essentially the basic services more or less in place. Some have also more advanced services. There is quite a lot of similar services across the border. So it seems like a good basis for having this collaboration. However, the problem that essentially we started to happen is that although services are very similar, and it is possible to say that let's just replace one service for another, it feels like a very natural thing to do. The problem is that the service providers that we have been analyzing, the national ones, are not really interested in that. So they don't have the mandate. There is no business model, different reasons. But this is actually a very important point, that without the ability to answer why should you do that, it's very hard to talk to service providers. And let's say service providers are generally very well aware of the costs that are related to running the services. So it sort of becomes about the money. So on the other hand, we were trying to understand if we can make the services more similar. So can we make them look more the same from the end user perspective? So that if at some point we solve the issue of cross-border service delivery, that it would be easier to actually replace one service with another. And we started essentially by analyzing a set of interoperability guidelines coming from European interoperability framework, from EOSC interoperability framework, from something else. And we picked those that could potentially be affecting the service provider side. So these frameworks that I mentioned before are quite big, and actually they are very much targeted towards data and data providers. So a generic service provider cannot benefit from too many things there. But we have essentially purified them. We try to come up with actionable guidelines, so how to actually address and what the service providers need to do in order to become more interoperable. And we essentially published that. We did try to sort of achieve a certain commitment by the policymakers for recommending that list as a go-to interoperability guide, but to be honest, we have failed. So it takes quite a while to get into the policies in the Nordics. And so what we have now is the EOSC-Nordic recommendation as to how to do interoperable services, taking into account well, the setup that we're in. Of course, these are generic recommendations, which are not Nordic region specific, but essentially following them makes it easier to work across the border. And by the way, we have tried to use a bunch of those when working on a new project, so the Puhuri project, because for existing services, actually these guidelines are very informative. So they are very much guidelines that essentially a mature service will not follow. So it doesn't matter what you suggest, if the service is mature, operating, the guidelines are great, but for the new ones, they can affect something. On the technical side, we also want to, so this first point is about the user-facing interface of the services, how to make them more homogeneous. But we also wanted to make it easier for the service providers to integrate with EOSC core services. And that's why we have established also some regional onboarding and service delivery platform. That would be the mediator between the EOSC core services and the gaps that will come and the local ones, ideally benefiting from the specifics and the, let's say, potentials for digitalization that are region specific. So this is something that we have done in collaboration with the EOSC, well, then EOSC Hub, now EOSC Future, EOSC Enhance, and whatever other projects are there that are responsible for delivering the EOSC core. And so this is an ongoing work there. The goal of that one is to make sure that it's very easy from both sides to exchange the information, exchange the reporting, exchange everything. And finally, we took a side step and looked at what else is available in the region. And there is a government network for exchanging the data between the different registers in the government in Estonia and Finland based on the same technology as well. And this is legally embedded into the legal system. So there are standard ways how to get access there. And there is also a federation between Estonia and Finland, so that if you want to get access to some kind of data registry, there is a clear path how to do that. So we wanted to understand, so can we use the same network, which is used for millions and millions of requests per year, and to see if it's a good fit for the research environment. So to make things harder, we also asked Latvia, which is not a member of that federation, to join and see if we could have 3 organizations from the region establishing a network for exchanging sensitive data. And actually, that was quite an interesting example of how we could establish a communication in a trusted way, meaning that we have strongly validated the representation rights of each of the organizations. We have established a technically binding way for integrating and exchanging the genomic data. For the purpose of the demonstration, we use the developed environments, which are slightly relaxed rules, and we also use the mocked data to avoid actual procedures which are connected to the production data. But all in all, we managed to set up a service, I think within essentially the technical side took maybe a couple of days in total for exchanging the data in a very standard way. And we know that this network will run because it's funded by Estonia and Finland, and it's used for a bunch of other core services. So the most time went there, I think, is in making sure that there are representation rights identified correctly. For example, this is actually something that we see a problem in EOSC, that whenever you are talking about EOSC and Service Federation, the level of assurances that you are actually working with somebody who has the right to do that are very low. And this is potentially an issue if you start involving payments, if you start involving transactions that include sensitive data. So a lot of trust is now inside the EOSC core services that actually is not supported by the legal processes. But the X-Road example is a small one. It was more used for demonstrating what could be done with existing infrastructure. And we will have a second iteration of that later on, just to see how easy it would be to include new services into the whole setup. So the main outcome is essentially for this task is that we have interoperability guidelines. They're there. The question is what we can do now next in order to actually increase the adoption of those. As I mentioned before, we tried to do it in Pukuri project, where we have maybe more control over how things are. But for existing services, we essentially can only promote that. And we have set up the platform that we have been, well, in the process of connecting to EOSC Core. That includes different features that would be required for such a platform, like help desk, monitoring, catalog services, potentially also a gateway for the national infrastructure locally to access EOSC services in a more clear way. It's not trivial. First of all, EOSC Core is a bit vague. Secondly, such kind of integrations actually require clarity on whom you integrate with. So because we essentially push personal data, like emails and names, to somebody, we need to know who this somebody is. And at the moment, for example, in EOSC Core, in EOSC Future, there is nobody. And this is just to highlight that at the moment, there is nobody to sign the GDPR data protection agreement with. And as such, it's not clear how at all this will happen, because currently there is work in EOSC Future to integrate regional catalog services that, without this agreement, are not really all right to do. So we are working on trying to figure out how this could work. So ideally, this will be done. So next steps from the point of view of work package. We will finish the discovery of new services that we think are better in allowing access across the border. We will eventually publish them in a portal somehow, hopefully in a legal way, and meet the KPIs that we are not meeting. And we will make sure that we will report on the findings and the lessons learned. So now the complicated part is actually that we also want to understand, preferably before the final report, is like, did we actually deliver any value to the service providers, so our initial target group? And the KPI that we are not meeting is actually the number of entries published in EOSC portal, which is an interesting KPI because it doesn't tell you how actually useful that is, because it's not related to the transactions. And there is, of course, a reason for that. It's very hard to estimate and promise the KPI if there is no, actual ordering system in place. But this is, in a sense, the best. It would have been the best KPI for measuring the actual impact. So to conclude, and maybe to pass a bit of message, one thing is that integrating and promoting EOSC on the regional level, if the core is a bit unclear, is inefficient. So we are spending quite a lot of effort, and it's quite expensive effort, and it's not very efficient effort. So the main issue is, of course, the sustainability. We have some questions about the rules of participation as well, because it's super inclusive now, and it's inclusive in that sense that it's both the services, it's software, publications, and so on and so forth. So it's not quite clear when EOSC starts and when EOSC stops. And of course, the question of integration of EOSC, as recently let's say the model has been that EOSC is actually a system of systems, meaning that you have to integrate multiple federations, thematic, regional, and so on into one. Then for that federation to happen, you need to be aware that there is actually a personal data transfer in progress, and it's not possible to do it, even in the toy example, without actually somebody representing EOSC. So I think this is something that is actually an issue, which hopefully will be addressed. So let me stop here and maybe have a bit of more time for the impolite questions or comments.
Seems to be somewhat abstract. I mean, it would be much more helpful if I would have an idea which services are we speaking about. So it's like concrete usefulness of this would be more clear if we knew exactly what services requested by whom and why.
Okay, so the services that we, sorry for not including the, essentially you can think of the typical suspects. Most of them were computational and storage services with some high level like data archiving and sensitive data processing services. But we concentrated on the, let's say, classical services which are offered by the national infrastructure providers to, in particular, be able to compare the maturity of those services across the countries. So in smaller countries, sometimes there are only very basic ones represented. And in order to include them into analysis, we try to make sure that we have essential computational service from each of the countries. So the concrete names as well as the analysis is actually available on the EOSC-Nordic website. So some services have agreed to allow to publish their results. Otherwise, we have just a summary of those. So, but you can think about, well, Computerome was one example that we sort of found out, but Computerome was not allowed to be published because it's, you know, Danish service.
Yeah, that is a good point. Abdulrahman?
Yes, service providers can, in principle, register their services in the EOSC marketplace without coming to EOSC-Nordic.
Exactly.
Did you have any sort of analysis on how did you make life easier, or can you make life easier? Why don't they just go to the marketplace? This is one question. And the second question, why do I need to publish my service on the marketplace when there are not many researchers accessing the marketplace or the EOSC core? Why do I have to spend some time and effort maintaining a record and updating my metadata on that when I have everything on my website and users are accessing my website and they are not accessing the EOSC marketplace?
So let me start with maybe first question. So we were thinking about that. So what is the extra added value that the Nordic platform would provide? At the moment, we see that it's potentially a common service desk, a common way of requesting services. So some common features which make the integration easier. Of course, a service provider that just wants to get published can go to the EOSC provider portal. But if, for example, now we're working on the ordering management integration, so that, and that is essentially work that is not trivial to do. So there are some added values that we are seeing from the regional perspective. So for example, if a service provider has an issue at the moment with publishing, you can request it from the EOSC-Nordic, and you will be essentially forwarded to the person from your country, which might speed things up a bit. But in that sense, you're right that at the moment there is a possibility to go straight to EOSC provider and do that. And this is at the moment the only way how things can be done in order to get in, despite some proof of concept attempts done by 5B projects. Using, yeah, okay. And the second question, why? So this is indeed a problem, and frankly, we cannot answer that at the moment. The only way that we see is the promotion of your service through EOSC portal.
Yeah.
Who would want to do that? First of all, those who are obliged by the contracts with the EU. So somebody who said that they must be in and promised that because of the call. Then, and this is based on the experience from services that go directly into EOSC portal. Then there are some commercial service providers which would like to potentially sell also to the new, market. And then that's it. I don't know. I mean, that is the problem that we have highlighted, that with the lack of clear sustainability model, it's very hard to answer such questions because EOSC-Nordic is about essentially integrating Nordics into EOSC, not providing new business models for the Nordic service providers. I don't know, in that sense, maybe you have a better answer. What? I cannot comment on nobody because maybe we just haven't found them yet.
So it sounds like we have a pretty clear incentive problem here, right? That service providers don't see strong incentives to get on the portal, and we can of course work with that because it's a deliverable of the project. And so if we fail in doing that, we fail in meeting target objectives of our project. But other than that, what would be the consequences if service providers don't get on the portal? What are who are the consequences for? And so what happens if service providers just don't do this?
So this is probably a question that I could maybe forward if you are not against taking it. Be open. I mean, I can present my view, but frankly, I think it would be I think the main damage will be done for EOSC as a concept from the perspective of the service providers, because it has been quite many years and we're still in the situation. So the damage is essentially on the idea of EOSC. But how big of the damage, that I don't know.
If I may continue, so I think the research provider-wise, the EOSC portal, it first should be kind of the portal where the national researchers try to find out the services. Otherwise, we need to keep on the national portals, make them available and visible and then findable for the researcher in there, and then in EOSC portal. So it's kind of the double work. And if the researchers don't find the services through EOSC portal, then there's no business case for the research providers to have them there. So that's kind of the chicken and egg problem. So in order to put the services there, it would need to be the de facto channel researchers in different countries try to find out the national services and the international services.
Mm-hmm. That is true. If that would be in place, so that instead of saying that this is Dike service, and for Dike service go to Dike web page, I would say that go to EOSC, filter by Denmark. And this would, of course, somewhat improve the motivation for the service providers. Yeah.
I think we have a big problem about this, the EOSC portal and how it will function for the future. Today, it's uncertain who owns the EOSC portal. It has moved to, I think now EOSC Future is working on the portal. And we from the association have discussions with EOSC Future about how to work with the portal. So, and those discussions aren't finished yet and not really clear either. So I hope it will be better in the future, but now I understand what you are saying. course, and I don't have a solution here.
Just a comment. I think the question, at least of René, was not about the visual part of the portal, but about the in principle approach. So why should DIKE promote its services in EOSC and not in DIKE? So do you have a vision? I think it's not about the, visuals.
It depends on what EOSC will be for the future. And I hope that it will be the main infrastructure for sharing data and services within Europe and outside. And if we don't manage to do that, then it will stay in each country.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's as much a comment as really helping out, because I do understand your trouble, Ilya. But I'll turn back to what I said yesterday as kind of reply. Why would anybody, seen from a consumer point of view, visit the EOSC portal? That would require substantial added value compared to the platforms people already use, primarily the disciplinary platforms and secondary service providers direct access. And in my view, you always have to ask in whose interest are portals made. I have been in web business for really a lot of years, and noticed that portals are mostly political projects. It's mostly to show that we have invested so and so much in this infrastructure, so there has to be some visible entry point. I don't believe EOSC portal has a lot of users. The figures I saw were ridiculously low for an investment of 30 million euros. It's a lot of money. Could build a really lot. And I think even as service provider, you should think of EOSC more as infrastructure than a portal. We have to find out how to federate services, how to integrate them, how to interoperate them at the infrastructural level. That would be my answer, and forget about this portal, which is no good to anybody but to DG Connect, in my opinion.
Thank you for that very sharp comment. I think we have a conflict because we are lacking the national incentive to onboard our services. So actually, the question is, can we foresee that EOSC Association perhaps could be a vehicle in order to help the countries in promoting the open science policy and aligning those activities? Because that's where I don't think we can show, not yet at least, unfortunately, we cannot show added value yet for the researchers. We are building up a platform that is still under constructions, and we can criticize that. Everybody here in the room, I think so, but the fact is that until we receive a national consensus between our countries that will be working jointly on this platform, we will not have the added value that we are looking for. So my question is more, do you foresee that we can use EOSC Association as a vehicle to promote that kind of alignment between national policies and these activities?
Yes, I think that really is part of the EOSC Association's task to do that. And it's this discussion about infrastructure and portal is also very interesting, and a question that is living within the association and discussion about.
All right, I think that thank you very much, Ilya. And thank you also for a very good discussion. That's a cute son. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next speaker. It's a team from Work Package 5, led by Adil Hassan, who's our Work Package 5 leader, who I believe we have online